Hey, welcome to another episode of In the Chute. I'm Brandon Carpenter of the Hashknife Ranch, and this is my esteemed colleague and and Shirley Temple like
About the
partner,
curly cues.
Calen. I almost called you Braden, Calen. I know it's you know what you just run through the list of kids till you get the one that you're looking at. What do you got for us today?
Gosh, that hurts.
Oh, well, live
So
with
the
it.
big thing, weather impacts. We're talking about you're coming out of winter, going into spring. But there's other things like the Dakotas. They're hurting because they haven't been getting a lot of water. In
Eastern
terms of rain.
Montana, yeah,
Yeah,
Eastern Montana and North Dakota is really tough right now.
yeah. I mean, they always are because they're the Badlands, but even more so these last few years. So, what are the some of the weather impacts to things like markets, weights on animals, maybe the way animals interact with you, like especially like when storms are coming, and then of course the survivability of a business. So, kind of going back to markets, what
Yeah,
weather impacts do we have on agriculture with stuff like that?
well, I mean, weather is huge. I mean, you hear terms, especially for farmers, uh, $1 million rain. Well, that was when I was a kid. You get a 3/4 inch, 1 inch rain over the course of 3, 4 days. That is manna. So it's
Mm-hmm.
that's what can make your year, especially at the right time in the spring, late spring, early summer. And I can remember some of the when I was a kid, some of the farmers when they would get you didn't see them in town all that much. They'd come to church and stuff on a Sunday, but you'd have a rain like that, and that rain settled in for a couple, 2, 3 days. Farmers would come to town and they'd party. They'd sit at the bar and have a few drinks. I mean, especially in the evening, it's like, oh yeah, it's a good rain. All these farmers are in town drinking.
Mm-hmm.
So because they're hardworking people. I mean, and I don't leave unless I need groceries or something, or see your mother. I've been at this now 6 weeks, 7 weeks, I think, and I've been to Billings like 3 times now, or four with,
Lucky.
but at a couple of them were work related, getting a trencher
Yeah.
to get some things done. But weather is something that uh, is so very important that people just I don't think they really realize. If you don't get the rain like they're in the Dakotas right now, Eastern Montana, even here, we're light on our moisture, and so we've been cool, um, no moisture to speak of, and our grass is behind already, and
Yeah.
I mean, way behind. So,
Well, there's
what
two
do you do?
things with
Buy
that.
hay?
Well, yeah, that too. I didn't think about the hay, but there's two things with that. I've seen a rotating thing on Twitter and Facebook where they're like, "Hey, anybody else's family stop talking when the weather came on when you're growing up?" That's just the thing. Like everybody, all right, shut up. I got to listen to the weather. And then
Yeah,
the other thing too is, anybody who's watching this, they're like, "Oh, they'll see in the probably down in the description of this, like Montana ranching family stuff like that." Well, Montana's beautiful. It's luscious. So, like, you probably been to the wrong side of the state there, pal. There's two parts of it. The west where you're looking at Kalispell, Missoula, even Bozeman. It's beautiful over there, and I love it. Trust me. But you go past the mountains, the Beartooths, the Crazies, and suddenly you're in eastern Montana. It's a completely different state. Like, I can't reiterate this enough to people. There's two different states within Montana. There's the west and there's the east, and the east is much more like a western Dakota. There's North and
yeah,
South Dakota, then there's West Dakota, and that's eastern Montana. And it's a giant rain shadow on the eastern
right.
side of the mountains, and that's where we get the drought issues that you're talking about right now.
Well, you're really looking. The state is in a 1/3 west and 2/3 central and east, and
Yeah.
the central and east is basically the same country. It's prairie. So um, the perception is that yeah, it's really lush because that's what they see in the postcards. And who's going to put a picture of something that's not good on a postcard?
Well, and the other problem is too, people they'll come up from uh, you know, let's say Colorado or Wyoming or Idaho, and they'll come into the park and then they go straight north because you're in West Yellowstone and then Gallatin and Big Sky and Bozeman. Well, those are all beautiful places and they're very mountainous. They're absolutely, trust me, they are gorgeous.
Well,
But they
even
never get
Livingston is
past
right
that.
there at the edge of the mountains. So yeah,
Yeah. They just never get past it, and so they think that's Montana. It's not.
That's correct.
But you're saying the impact on weights of animals and hay as well, right?
Well, yeah, if you don't have the forage there, what are you going to do? I mean, if you don't have something for feed for an animal, then you're going to start doing a couple of things early. One's buy hay. Where's the hay going to come from? Somewhere that's a long ways away where they're not in a drought situation and they have the hay availability. It's going to cost a ton of money to bring them in. Bring those truckloads in, and you're not just talking, a couple ton of hay. You're talking, you know, you may take 100 ton of hay. You don't know. Now you're feeding year round. You may take 200 ton of hay. So you can't afford to do that. Not for very damn long. Then it's a matter of maybe grabbing a good trailer load or two of your worst looking cows, the ones that are not the absolute pinnacle of what you want, and you liquidate them. You take them to town, and then that causes a ripple effect in the markets, because if everybody's doing the same thing, now you're sending animals to a market that's going to get a high influx, and prices are going to be dropped down. They're going to crash on you because of supply and demand. I mean, that's that's the way our system works. So you've got that issue. Um, if you're able to hang on, even feeding hay during the summertime does not necessarily fatten cattle. You need green grass. You need good stuff, good high protein cured out grass that's reasonably fresh cure, and you get that into an animal, then they're going to fatten up. If you're doing it through hay, it's not as good because they're not foraging as they want or as you provide it. So you're going to probably take some weight or not have some weight on those animals that you should have. Last year we saw, and it wasn't necessarily weather related, in a way it is, because they're cyclic. We had a bad grasshopper year last year, and it took 25 pounds average off of our steers because
Oh,
they were competing with grasshoppers. Grasshoppers usually follow hot, dry weather. So you've got a reduction in forage to begin with because you just don't have the growth. Now you have grasshoppers coming in there and eating what's there, and so it's a competition, but a mammal versus an insect. And when you've got those millions and millions and millions of insects, you're getting what you get. So that's a huge problem. I mean, I feel really bad for those people there. I feel bad for us. I worry about it. I mean, weather is something. If the snow's not preventing you from keeping stuff alive, then the rain's not coming. It's preventing things from growing so that you can survive. I mean, it's a very very real and daily thing that you look at. Several years ago, I was in the store in Billings, and went up to the deli. We're going to grab some lunch meat, good lunch meat, and it was raining outside. And I was like, man, I'm feeling good because I love the rain. I mean, that's just it's hope, and it's refreshing. And this gal's waiting on me. She goes, and you could tell I was wet, and it had walking in there. And she goes, oh, is it still raining outside? And I said, yeah, it is. She goes, oh God, I hope it stops. And I'm like, what? Yeah. I said, why would you hope it stops? Oh, because I like sunshiny weather. And I said, well, you know what? Let's talk about that a little bit. And so we had a little economics lesson about what her food would cost if she didn't have rain. And she goes, I have never thought of it that way. Nobody's ever said that. We just think about having good weather or bad weather to be
mm-hmm.
able to do the things we want to do. I said, I get it. I understand. I said, but think about these in larger terms. And it was, I don't know, a month later, and I went in, and it was just a light shower. I mean, it just happened to be things lined up. The same gal, and I went up and I kind of greeted her, and I before I could even tell her what I needed, or she asked me before. She goes, "It's raining out, isn't it great?" And I said, "Yes, it is." So, that was funny. Obviously, she remembered it, made an impact. But you know what? People don't get it. They don't
Yeah.
understand that. They think of it in the terms of, "Oh, I'm going to have a nice weekend." Geez, I
Yep.
hope the weather's nice for a weekend that I can go out and do what I want to do. And it's weather is not something that we want because we want to enjoy. having a day off. It's something we need, and it's not necessarily the the sunshiny weather. I mean, we need that too, but we need a good rain and followed by some decent sunshine, some warm weather, so things will grow, and then cycle that, often.
Yeah. Well, and another thing too, so that's the economic portion, but then the other thing too, and this is more related towards horses, but it works with cows too, is oftentimes storms and stuff like that, their behavior changes.
Mhm.
And so you got to be more careful of that. Uh, what are some of the things that you think people either underestimate or they just don't think of when it comes to livestock and weather?
Um, Probably what it takes to um, keep those animals where they're at. I mean, if I see a bunch of a herd, anybody's herd, it doesn't matter where you're at, and they're traveling towards the east, uh, there's probably a storm coming and a good one because they feel that low pressure drop and they're traveling away from that prevailing wind, and they get hung up by a fence and they can't go anywhere, and they'll just stand there and take it. And that was part of the reason why some of these animals will die. They'll get balled up down into a coulee out of the wind, especially in a winter time or late spring where you got heavy snows followed with winds, and they can get drifted in. And that happened here in Nebraska here several years ago, where they lost thousands and thousands and thousands of cattle that got down into uh, a little draw out of the wind, and the snow come in, and you had a couple feet of snow driven by winds that covered them up, suffocated them. I mean, it can happen. Buffalo, the one smart thing about them is something comes in, they just turn their butt to it and just wait it out. They don't wander. Horses, you'll see horses, they'll move, they'll start playing and you know pawing at each other and sparring and fighting and just in fun. And they're getting ready for that storm to come in. I mean, there's a lot of signs like that that are specific to it, but you gotta be prepared for it. You see that stuff start coming like the last couple of storms we've had here. I've been out horseback getting some of these cows in, and you wouldn't do this with a larger herd, but I'm down to this, last little bit. I've got just less than a half a dozen cows left to calve, and I got a storm coming in with wind and rain and cooling temperatures where I got wind chill, and a calf can be in cool temperatures with dry snow, wet, not wet heavy snow, but a dry snow. And those cows can get them picked up if they're, you're 25, 20 degrees, they do okay. But when they get wet and soaked and stay wet and they can't get up, can't get dried off, and they can't get any milk in them that first couple of times, those are killer storms. They can kill a calf pretty easy, or they develop scours, or basically like a diarrhea. Um, you've got some issues there. So I've been having some of these storms coming, and I know they're coming, so I'm out riding and I'm bringing in these little bunches of cows. And they see me coming, they're like, "Oh God, I'm not free." So they're getting better. They head to the corral, and I lock them in for the night, and I watch them. I check them like you would the heifers, depending on how the storm is, and then it clears in a day or two. Then I kick them back out. So I've had to do that because I'm just, you don't want to lose a calf.
Yeah. So, all right. I guess that kind of, I mean, a big economic impact, and then it also, it affects the way animals interact with not only each other, but then you as well. And they can be a nice little telltale sign of something's coming.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it can affect you individually, but all those individuals together, it'll affect an entire commerce and market in a whole region of the West or the
Mhm.
U.S. I mean, happens all the time. You get dark conditions in other countries that they just don't stop. I remember when I was a kid, they were burning cactus spines off of prickly pear cactus in Texas just so the cows had something to eat. It was incredible. It was
That's
bad.
desperate.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. With that, I think we'll put this one out to pasture.